What's happening, guys? Welcome to another eclectic edition of PWT Podcast. I am your host, Phil Marks, and this is a very special episode of the podcast I recorded in two chunks. So I have an interview with, of course, Ant Evans, UFC PR. He worked alongside Scott D'Amore. We'll get into it all, you know what I mean? And this was just a great interview, and I only had him for a little short while here. And then I have Chris Connor from the Last Call podcast come on, and this is a very MMA pro wrestling hybrid themed show. So hopefully that's your cup of tea, and if it isn't, hopefully this opens a door into maybe a world of martial arts or combat sports that you might like. But it's not just focused on that. Trust me, your boy Phil knows what he's doing, and I always tie it back to pro wrestling as best I can. And I hope you guys enjoy this. Follow me at prowrestletimes. We're above 1,000 subs on the Pro Wrestle Times channel. We are at almost 4,000 subs at Pro Wrestle Clips. I hope you enjoy it. All right, and joining me on the show now, folks, is the infallible, that's my nickname, but we'll use it for him today. Ant Evans is here. So, former UFC talent relations PR. You worked alongside Scott D'Amore in TNA. You worked on the UFC Hall of Fame. You worked on Fight Pass, which is the fight gods' gift to MMA marks like myself. And just to catch the audience up, if they aren't familiar, I had a chance to talk with you before on Toonie Talk, but I didn't get to pick your brain quite all the way as well as I wanted to. So, Ant, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate you.
No problem, man. It's funny that I've been kind of like the longer it is since I worked at the UFC, the more I get promoted. I've been called, senior vice president. I'm like, really? Like my bank account never reflected that. Talent relations. I didn't actually do talent relations. There isn't really a talent. Well, there is now a talent relations department run by my friend Reed Harris, but I didn't actually do that, but the rest was accurate. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's what I see people throw out there. We're just
sometimes I just keep my mouth shut. I'm like, I did do that.
Man, better get the rub that way. So tell me a little bit. I know you worked in martial arts and like in that space and pro wrestling and all that, but tell me about, like, do you have a martial arts background of any sort, and like what compelled you to start like working in that field?
Yeah, so I do. I grew up during the 80s, so Karate Kid, Ninja Turtles were really big, and I did every type of martial art you could possibly. That was the days when like every street corner had a karate dojo or a Wing Chun Kung Fu or a Jiu-Jitsu, or I also boxed a little bit in my later teens, early 20s. But I always wanted to, be involved in combat sports. At the time, that simply meant boxing, because that's really all there was. Yeah. So I worked in boxing as a reporter. Gradually, that morphed into doing PR. I was lucky enough to work with a guy called Ricky Hatton, who was a huge boxing star in Great Britain. Mm-hmm. Crossed over to being an international star in the US. And remember getting UFC. I actually got UFC 2 first on VHS. It was on a local garage or garage, as a lot of people now say in America. A garage, yeah. I've got this weird, horrible because I've lived in Las Vegas for like 12 years. I've got this weird, horrible mix of English and American English. It's like terrible. I never know what I'm going to sound like before I open my mouth. But I just loved it, and I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. And UFC came to the UK in 2002 for what did a show, and they're supposed to come back. And I kind of like shoehorned my way in there, helping out here and there, because I had a website that they sponsored to give them coverage, and their PR people were shite. So I helped them out a little bit. And after the show, I spoke to Dana White, and he was like, "Hey, man, thanks for everything. You've got a job. Next time we come back to the UK, you've got a job." Wow. Well, it's a good job I didn't quit my day job, because they didn't come back for 5 years. Yeah, it's a long time. And Dana had forgotten me in that conversation, but I was, I had a couple of friends who worked at the UFC who, put in good words. So I met Marshall Zelaznik, who who was the head president of the UK division of the UFC, and he met me, and I went there and I talked about, well, what you've got to do is this, and you just like we did with Ricky Hatton, you've got to do that with Michael Bisping, you're going to do this and that and that. And I walked out thinking, chef, nailed that interview. But Marshall turned around to his colleagues and said, I don't understand one thing that man just said, but he seems really confident, so we should probably hire him.
Hey, that's all you need sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. So I worked in, that was beginning of my journey of the UFC.
That's incredible. And like, so what's Ricky Hatton like? Like, legend.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Ricky was awesome to work with. Apart from like, he would try and change the times of like open workouts on the day. I'm like, Ricky, we've got people on the train right now from London to come to Manchester and who got up at 5 a.m. and nobody likes getting up at 5 a.m. Ricky, you don't. So no, we're going to do it at 12 o'clock when we said, so, you know, these gentlemen don't have to stay here all day.
And what was that attributed to? Was he a bit of a wild guy, or he just kind of, no, I'm going to do things on my own time?
No, the thing is, this is the talent relations part of PR. PR is doing good PR. There's a lot of dickheads on Twitter with every subject, but there's a particularly stupid dickhead class who like sneer at public relations and what it is. And public relations is with the UFC, it's you essentially have 5 bosses. Obviously, you got the boss of the UFC as your boss. That's who's paying you wages. That's who your loyalty's to. But you've also got a boss who is the fighter. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got to take in consideration they have wives, girlfriends who have birthdays. You know, they have bar mitzvahs to attend. They have weddings to attend. They have soccer games and little league games to attend. They have the birth of children, you know, going on. They've got a life. Yep. They're not just, you know, some resource that you can pull on because they're under contract with the UFC. And also, you've got talent like Nick Diaz, who absolutely hates interviews. He hates it.
Yeah.
And he's not trying to be rude. He just doesn't like it.
I understand that too. I actually get that aspect of it. You know, my grandfather was a boxing coach. My mom actually was a kickboxer, and so I understand that aspect of it. Like he just doesn't like it, and it's not that he's trying to be rude. It's not even. Mm-hmm. It's just something it's an aspect of the fighting that he just doesn't even see a purpose in. As far as I don't know, and it's crazy.
Yeah, because he's super confident in one or two aspects. I mean, to be stripped to the waist in front of 20,000 people and fighting another guy, you're confident. But it doesn't mean you're confident in everything. He doesn't like it. It gives him, you know, it makes him feel a certain type of way that he doesn't enjoy feeling. So, you know, you've got to work with him and say, okay, Nick, here's everybody who wants to talk to you. Yeah. There's a list of 12. You take away 7. Yeah. It's like, he goes, really? I was like, yeah, just here's a pen, just cross them out, and we'll just do those fights. Yeah, he did. And then, you know, he showed up on time and was you know, a mensch to work with, as my friend Errol Hawani says.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other one is you also got a boss. You've got the media. You know, you got your one-on-ones, like, you know, mention Ariel. Like Ariel wanted a certain type of story, wanted a certain type of interaction. You know, my friend Kevin Ioli, and I mentioned that my friends, they became friends over time, you know. Yeah. And it's, you know, they all want the best scoop. They all want to speak to the top fighters in the most newsworthy time. Well, you can't do that for everybody. Mm-hmm. You know, so you've got to manage that. So you essentially got 3 bosses. You got the fighters, the media, and you've got obviously the people who actually employ you are all your bosses, and you've got to juggle that. That's what public relations, and you've got to know what a good story is.
Moving on from that, how did you get into pro wrestling then? Like, where did that shift happen where you're like working in TNA or you're involved in the pro wrestling world? Was that simultaneous, or did that come after? Or
yeah, so after I left the UFC, the pandemic happened, and, you know, I was basically, you know, looking for something to occupy my time when, you know, I was pretending I was a school teacher to my kid, you know, because schools were shut down. Everyone was that horrible, freaky time we were all in. But
it was
so
weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I was so bored, like a lot of people.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Jamie Pollock, who worked at the UFC for a long time, he had just been made essentially like the number one or two executive at Anthem Sports and Entertainment, which owned TNA. We'll call it TNA. It was Impact at the time, but
Right.
TNA.
Yeah.
And a mutual friend of ours said, "Hey, do you know Jamie's doing that pro wrestling shit?" I was like, "Would you help him out?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Shit, he'd love to hear that you're available." So Jamie called me straight away, and I was like, "I need help. Would you do this?" I love fucking pro wrestling, and I was a big fan of TNA. During the Monty Brown, Kurt Angle era.
Man. Monty Brown he's one of the biggest misses, I think, in pro wrestling history.
Yeah.
As far as star quality and that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was a big fan, and I really got on with Scott D'Amore. Actually, speaking to Scott just before I got on with you,
brilliant.
And yeah, that was a fun run. But ultimately, with the thing was the people who run that company, and this is why Scott D'Amore's not there anymore. Is they don't really want success. Not really. They don't really want to make money. They want to be right. They want to be right. And what they want to be right about is the way they ran things 5-6 years ago.
So they look at the way they ran things 5-6 years ago before D'Amore came in and really got everything. I would call TNA white hot, if you will. I mean,
it was white hot. 8 months ago, it was white hot again. Yes. And they got rid of the architects of that. In fact, they got rid of all the architects of that.
Well, now I would say it is heating up again because of all the crossover stuff they're doing with NXT and WWE.
Yeah, and who did that? Who did that relation? Who caused that relationship to happen? Scott D'Amore.
That's boom. Here, I'm going to drop an arrow. This is what I mean. So I've always sort of speculated that because Scott D'Amore's like beloved. People, by all accounts, people love this guy.
Yeah, no one's got a bad Scott D'Amore story.
And so you had said on Toonie Talk when I spoke with you the first time, I think I'd asked you about TNA and how things are heating up. And I think you had said that in your opinion, in like 18 months, TNA probably won't even be around. It'll probably be absorbed or something. Now, seeing with what they're doing on WWE and NXT, and I think some of that is like Tony Khan calling Triple H and Shawn Michaels bald asshole. I think some of that is Shawn
Michaels. I missed that.
Yeah.
I'm bald. I mean, what's.
Yeah, well, Tony Khan tweeted out a while ago. Did
he say that really bold?
He really did, man. I could pull it up.
I take offense to that. I believe you. It's just at what point does he stop embarrassing himself?
I know, man. And
the thing is, you know what? I bet Triple H and Shawn Michaels have got hair just like Tony Khan's, just not on their heads.
Yeah, exactly. Tony Khan. Oh no, everything's great over here. It's Wonderland. Everything's so safe and magical. It's great. But yeah,
it's more like Neverland with Michael Jackson. It's like, yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, playing with all the old toys he couldn't as a kid. He's doing stat work.
I didn't mean it to be that creepy, but sure.
I'll take it there, whatever. But listen, so he made a bald assholes comment, and I think some of them working with TNA is like, Shawn Michaels going, "Oh, really, bald assholes? We'll work with you. We'll show you how to do Forbidden Door or whatever." Yeah. But now, has your opinion changed? Do you think TNA's gone in 18 months, or do you see it as
just the people are in charge? Like, Ariel Sherner, fucking Nero, all those guys are dumb as a box of rocks.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, they're cornflakes for brains. If their brains were gunpowder, they couldn't blow a bogey from the left nostril. I mean, I don't know if I'm getting my point across. I think they're stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it's got. I mean, that and Invicta, I think, have got about 18 months, 2 years. I mean, Invicta right now. I mean, they did this big. I'll take some credit for it because I was like, hey, Invicta, why haven't you done a show in 9 months? You've never gone more than 3 months without a show. In a decade, why have you gone 9 months without a show? And that's because Len Asper, who owns Anthem, was like, I'm not putting any more money into this. I'm like, well, why did you acquire it if you're not going to invest in it? Invicta's a great brand. Shannon Knapp, poured her heart and soul into this and created something that's got real value.
Yep.
You acquire it, To do what with it? Nothing. Not even put it on your own TV station that you're on Access TV. You don't want it on there. I was like, all right, why acquire it? So there's other things Shannon could have done with it. So I kind of brought attention to that, and I'm not. This deal obviously would have been in the works anyway, but the deal that Invicta FC MMA has got with CBS Sports, it's a time buy. They're buying their way on there.
Right. Okay.
So that's not a TV. That's not a you and I could, throw a bunch of money and get this conversation on TV if we really wanted to. If we, if we just money marks, sure. Man, that's not securing the future. And look, they smoke and mirrored it really, really well last year. But TNA stopped making wrestling last year for a whole chunk of time in Q4 last year. Mm-hmm. They basically went dark. No one really noticed it because they were so excited about the TNA relaunch and all that. Right. But they went dark. They went dark to save money.
And there was there was like a month there of like recap shows. I remember I watched it, so I was watching it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they didn't. The only reason they did that is so they did not pay as much money out each month. They're reasonably close to being there again. I mean, I'm sure they're getting more. They're in a better position with the NXT stuff, and there's more buzz about it. But I don't know. So I still think it doesn't have a lot. Just the people at Anthem are so fucking stupid.
And so do you think to them they're like patting themselves on the back over, oh, D'Amour's gone, but look what we're doing with WWE right now? Do you think that they're looking at that as some sort of victory or? Yeah,
I mean, there's some of the people in particular. So I mean, look, I love a couple of people there. I'm really, really, can't say enough good things about. Josh Matthews is awesome.
Love him.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. Ross Foreman's fantastic. We should be listening to these guys who've been there. I mean, Ross was on the WCW booking committee when WCW was kicking the shit out of WWE.
Yeah,
like, listen to him.
Yeah,
he's been in the business now for 40 years.
Yeah, Bischoff. He gets so much pay.
Doesn't
even make sense.
Yeah. But yeah, they're probably like, "Oh, we're doing all right." But it's the fucking thing. Is like they did a massive pay-per-view, really, really good pay-per-view in January, Rebellion, and then they just cut the balls off all that goodwill by getting rid of Scott the way they did, and in such a cowardly way, like basically pretending it was mutual, and then Scott was like, "No." And just such a cowardly way. It was handled exactly the way it's always going to be handled back with these Nimrods.
Yeah, and you had brought up before how when Tony Khan and AEW did their little TNA crossover there, and you had brought up on the show on where I interviewed you before, you were saying how Scott D'Amour sort of couldn't or didn't feel the need to take shots back at Tony Khan when Tony Khan
it was look. So to the credits for the Anthem people I was just mentioning were like, hey, we're getting a little brothered a bit here, but on the other hand, we had Kenny Omega on our TV show doing fucking the best buy rates the company had done since Hulk Hogan days.
That's for real? Kenny did that?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who clip articles and they'll go, "Oh, look, Kenny did some of the worst ratings for TNA," and I was like, "I don't know about that, man. It's Kenny."
Nonsense. Yeah. The first time he was on, including YouTube clips and stuff like that, over 1 million people watched TNA. Whereas the average for some weeks was like 100,000. So that's absolute nonsense. It just
And so was it like the higher up Anthem folk being like, "Now Scott, don't say nothing about Mr. Khan," or was
I think that came from fucking Scott's probably going to watch this and give me a call and start bollocking me, but he isn't my boss anymore. So
hey Scott, come on the show and clear up the air. You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. But Scotty, I wrote like a page of zingers. What we could do, and these were softballs. They were like making fun of like Tony Khan's soccer club had just lost. It was they weren't like, oh, that's personal and no cutting. It's like, no, they were like just little flicks. He was like, no, we can't use them. I was like, what? I was like, we got, even like Tony Schiavone, making, asking him, because he's a barista, there was like a Frappuccino reference, Frappuccino for brains or something. Yeah. Like it's just schoolyard stuff, like not nasty, not ill-intended, and it was like, no, we can't.
Yeah.
It was like, seriously? But we have Tony making fun of our product on our product? I was like, all right, okay.
Speaking of Tony Khan and that, they announced, everybody's speculating about their whole TV deal and all of that. And of course, everybody's TV business execs on Twitter and all that. But,
exactly.
but when it boils down to things, I look at things like when you boil it down, right, like they put their PLEs, pay-per-views, whatever you want to call it. They did some deal with Triller. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Triller. You probably are. You're smarter in this field than I am. They're not doing too hot, right? Like, what is that about? How do you view that? Is that a good move on Tony Khan's behalf, like taking the pay-per-views and that back catalog and putting it over on Triller? Because I think, didn't they stop doing fights and stuff like that too? I'm pretty sure they're in the red big time right now. A bunch of celebrities pulled out of that. So, yeah, do you have any insight on that?
Well, I do some, yeah. So only some I can share. But so good friend of mine, actually, one of my old bosses at the UFC, Eric Winter, is I believe taking over Triller, and he'll write the ship. Yeah, Triller's got really good technology. I much prefer. I always feel pretty confident when I pay my money on a pay-per-view on Triller that it's FiteTV, as I always call it. That was the old brand of it. That it's not going to fall on its arse. You can't say that about Bleacher Report, wherever the heck that platform was on. It was always falling down. You can't even say that about ESPN Plus, which is absolute dog shit of a platform. Terrible, inexcusably bad. Like I would say like once out of every 2 pay-per-views, on UFC, I personally experience a problem. And you go online, and obviously Twitter's not real life, but you see so many people saying the same things, like it's choppy, the audio is 30 seconds behind the action, or it's just crap. It's absolute shite. Fight is not that. Fight, I've never had a problem. I've never seen people have a major problem with Triller. So, yeah, I think actually that's a smart move going there. I mean, what he should do is, and I don't also believe you can get AEW pay-per-views via YouTube now as well. I think that's been a thing for a little while. I think
that is a thing. And is that a good move? Like, I know you talked with Eric Bischoff about how AEW can improve their YouTube game, and you're saying, look, dude, they're leaving money on the table,
A lot.
I think one of the reasons TNA sort of turned around, and this might just be me sort of making this up, but I don't know, man, their YouTube presence got so good in TNA where it was like I'm sitting there watching old pay-per-views on the off day where there's no wrestling or anything. So, and I feel like that really helped turn like the TNA around as well.
Well, thank you, because I was behind that. So I appreciate you fluffing me there.
There you go. And so AEW with their YouTube, I know you've pitched some ideas as far as like, hey, they could be doing like this and this to make their YouTube presence better. Tell me about some of your ideas in that regard.
Yeah, so like with AEW, so look, AEW for good and bad, it is a hardcore product. For I'll use Tony Khan's exact words. He makes wrestling for the wrestling sickos. Okay. I'll leave that for other people to see if that's like Eric Bischoff certainly has very pronounced opinions about that not being how you get a mainstream audience.
Me too.
On television, but what it does, if you've got that hardcore, and I'll just look at this, let's just say it's 600,000 worldwide. Okay, I only need 600,000. It's probably more than that. But for easy math, let's say it's 1 million worldwide.
Yeah.
Who are AEW sickos.
Yeah.
Their YouTube channel should be tailored to them exactly. They should have a membership on YouTube, and they could charge $20. I reckon they could probably charge $30
easily
a month. And you give them access. You have a camera going backstage because hey, that's how we saw the CM Punk non fight with Jungle Jack Perry.
Jesus, what an embarrassment that was.
Just leave that. I would, I'd get their over mojos. One of the things I loved, and the audience we had, and the culture we had on TNA is we're a club. We're over here having fun every Thursday, watching wrestling together. We're all wrestling nutcases, Whenever, oh shit, I'm blanking on his name. What's the Frankenstein character? PCO.
Yep.
So PCO, obviously, he was one of the Mounties back in the day.
Yep.
So in the chat is like, as Impact Wrestling, I'll go, I think I was arrested in Montreal by someone who looked just like him about 20 years ago. And everyone in the chat's like falling over because they all get the reference because it's an insider of an inside of an inside reference. Whenever there was a chop, we had a woo emoji and like it would just be spammed. It was a way to say, hey, you might not have a best friend who will come over every Thursday, watch TNA, but we're here for you on YouTube. We're all here. We're all the one of the proudest things I ever achieved is the first 10 minutes of the show on YouTube when we're watching it on the Ultimate Insiders was people saying, "Hey Phil, hey Ant, hey Dave, hey Tina." They were like friends that they like. It was just like a relationship, and it was so cool. Of course, Ariel Sherner couldn't wait to get. Now he's in charge of it. Couldn't wait to cancel all that because so, well done. It just like literally take your hardest of the hardcore fans, the people who supported it, even when TNA was pretty dross during the early pandemic, when they didn't know what they were doing, how they're going to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
You take that something away from them that they've been enjoying for years. I mean, tremendous. Yeah. But, there's no reason that AEW couldn't do that times 1,000.
I know.
But I was weird. I was just on a call with a guy who used to run AEW's social media, and he said that what happened was they do the top 5 moments of Dynamite. It's like people would bitch at him that they weren't number one.
The wrestlers would.
The wrestlers would come up to him and say, "Hey, I saw you did your top 5. You had me at number 2. I should have been number 1. I was the biggest moment."
Oh my god!
Yeah,
dude.
I
cannot believe that.
I mean, the correct answer there is get over yourself.
Holy shit!
I do what's right for YouTube, and you were number 1 last week. You were number 1 next week. You're number 1 3 weeks ago. I mean, you can't do your best work under those circumstances, and that's a failure of management. The talent shouldn't be going and essentially throwing their weight around with rank and file members of the staff. That should not be allowed to happen.
Could you imagine one of those WWE playlists like CM Punk's greatest moments, and then Punk goes, "Hey, Paul, I'm actually this should be number 1." Even a guy that level, that's just such like weird. From what I've heard, I don't want to be like, oh yeah, I'm getting told all this, but from what I've heard, the backstage of AEW is like it's a weirder culture where it's like a lot of people who just think the shit don't stink ultimately. And I don't want to just blanket put that on everyone, but you're just telling me that's another story to add to my list of like, are you serious?
Yeah. So, I was talking about with the Good Brothers once. I was, they're so awesome. So I was talking about it with Gallows once, and I was like, "Why is it like that?" Because he was describing not with AEW. I mean, I think he had like pretty positive experiences there, but he was talking about other locker rooms. I was like, "That's so weird." I was like, "That's just not." Because I just come from the UFC. I was like, "I've just been with the UFC for 12, 13 years. It's nothing like that." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "So the UFC, if you talk shit, you can go, all right, we'll come and spar then. All right, then let's fight." He goes, "Here, it's not that. It's a work." So no, everyone thinks they're the toughest guy. Everyone thinks they're the biggest star, and there's no real way of saying you're not. I was like, that's when you have to get into like, well, I draw heat. Well, like, does he really draw? Now you're whispering like, yeah, he's only pulling reins because this, or you've got the non-stop whispering campaign. But yeah, I mean, look at what Cody Rhodes doing. And Cody Rhodes is like the hottest thing in the world right now, and the whispering campaign against someone that talented who was so obviously just a license to print money.
Oh my god!
And AEW had him in bored the will to live out of him. in the mid card, you know?
Exactly. When a guy like Cody jumped off the ship, like he saw the writing on the wall way, way, way ahead of everybody else. And yeah, I mean, geez, and then you look now too. They got Ethan Page in NXT. They took him, and he's brilliant on the mic, and he's their champion in NXT. And it's like, dude, you guys fumbled. These are your guys, and you fumbled them, you know. And Ethan,
you'd hope that an executive at Time Warner would have a conversation like, "Hey, you want this money and stuff, but I'm looking at WWE, and I'm looking at CM Punk, I'm looking at Cody Rhodes." You know, I'm looking at their women's division. We give you this money. How are you going to keep talent? It just looks like you don't. You hope that's the kind of questions they're asking.
Yeah, but who knows if they actually are. So, Ant, what do you got going on in your life? Is there anything I could just talk to you for like days and days? Truly, I mean, we got so much.
I can come back.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome back here anytime. And I would love to have you back sometime. But why don't you let the good folks know like what you got going on? Do you have anything to plug, promote, just anything you want to throw out there to the universe?
Yeah, the Toonie guys always ask me. I was like, not really. I was like, I work with Conrad Thompson. I work with, Ariel Hawani. I work with.
Oh, come on now, Ant. That's not very fair, Ant. To pigeonhole me like that and bring up me.
Yeah, I mean, I work with some really cool guys, but I mean, if I got anything for the plug.
Okay, well, that's all right, man. Right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much, and I can't wait to talk to you again, hopefully in the future, and we'll stay in touch. Everybody, ladies and gentlemen, Ant Evans. Make sure you go and follow him, Ant Evans MMA. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, guys, that was an amazing interview with Ant Evans. Round of applause for him And joining me now on the show, another MMA / pro wrestling enthusiast from the Last Call podcast, The Last Call for Alcohol with Chris Connor. Tried to steal your gimmick, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you holding up? And we just dropped your interview, so I want to thank you for coming to my show. So the least I can do is come on yours. So once again, thank you for bringing the heat on my show. And literally, you just almost an hour of you going nuts on Cena, on the basically the triple threat, which is Punk, McIntyre, Rollins, the Netflix. I mean, you covered almost everything and then some. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having me on. And guys, make sure you check out the Last Call podcast with Chris Connor. I'll tag him over on X at prowrestletimes. And I believe your handle, just before we get into things, at Last Call W Chris C on X. And make sure you go and check that out. And yeah, he's releasing, as he said, as we speak, dropping the interview and the reviews or fantasy mark booking, if you will, that I did over there on that show. So if you enjoy your boy Phil Marks, make sure you go and check out Last Call podcast. Yeah. And man, how about Ant Evans? What just a complete gem. I could talk to that guy for hours and hours and hours, and he will be back on the show. But I want to keep things going with the whole discussion of hybrid wrestling, crossover, MMA. That's the theme of this podcast here. And so, we talked about hybrid fans. Of course, Ant Evan worked in pro wrestling and MMA. We spoke about the different dichotomy between the egos, if you will, or the personality traits. But if we're talking about kayfabe, brother, and we're talking about the matches, and, there are people who are hybrid fans, if you will, like myself or like Chris Connor, like Ant Evans, who like both pro wrestling and mixed martial arts. And, the hybrid work shoot style has been prominent in both sports since the dawn of both of them. And someone who's making that more mainstream again is Josh Barnett with his Bloodsport events. Chris, how familiar are you with the Bloodsport events? And do you keep up? Like Shayna Baszler fought Masha Slamovich. She's returning soon. This year again, or this event coming up, the Creed brothers, Julius and Brutus, are going to fight in Bloodsport. They announced someone else, but it's like sort of a forbidden door, and they're bringing that Bushido style pride, shoot, work, shoot, pancrase stuff to the forefront again. Are you a fan of that?
Yes and no. I mean, look, I give Barnett credit because look, the fact that he can get all these people, and when I mean people, I mean the big, pardon my language, the big swinging dicks, WWE, TNA, AEW, New Japan, All Japan, MLW, to the table. I mean, think of that. He's getting all these people to go, okay, we'll lend you this talent, we'll lend you that talent, we'll lend you this person, we'll lend you that person for an event. That itself is just incredible, because that is just like pulling teeth. And that he gets these people who understand, okay, this is going to be a bit of a shoot, a bit of a pro wrestling, a bit of a work. We're blending it in. I commend him for that. It's tough, because if you value grappling, if you're an MMA fan, you can see through it and go, yeah, it's still a bit phony, because they're not going fully on the way, because they can't. But you appreciate how far they're going, and it's, as I said, it's tough, because it's like full 3/4 speed, half speed. That they're doing it, and they're tricking the lazy eye. But if you really love MMA, it's like, yeah, I see what they're doing. I can appreciate it, but it's almost like if magic tricks and you can see through. It's like, oh yeah, I see that invisible, the invisible rope here. Damn it! But it's good, and I give Barnett credit, because what he's doing, man, that is just impressive.
Yeah,
pulling all of this off.
Yeah, dude, I saw Rampage Jackson do like a shoot work at Bloodsport recently, and it was fucking amazing. And then, I mean, on this card, you have Shayna Baszler taking on Miyu Yamashita, and then you have, like I said, the Creed brothers of all people. Like, you'd think, like, I can't believe that. And then you have Homicide versus Mike Santana lined up. So the real prohibited portal, again, WWE showing they're willing to step through it. And I like this shoot work thing, although, like, when it comes to Lola Vice and Shayna Baszler in like the underground match, I thought it got a little hokey at times in the apex there. But I'm not the biggest fan of that style of match, and doing like, what Kane and Brock did in WWE, or doing like, when Ronda tried to do the sort of work shoot MMA style pro wrestling match, because like people will just watch MMA if they want to see that, and I'm a huge MMA fan. So I just like what they're doing here. And I like, Josh Barnett is Shayna Baszler's manager as well. And so it's he directly talks to WWE, and they're clearly interested in whatever he's got going on with this. And we do know that WWE's telling their talent to work a little more strong style as well, like the younger people, getting them ready, allegedly, for like when Julia comes in, and these like marigold girls who are going to be taught to work stiff like they do in Japan, they're getting everyone ready sort of for that thing. And I think rotating people like the Creed brother, like the Creed brothers come across like these all-American white meat baby face type guys. So when you put them in Bloodsport, it's going to show another side of them that's, I don't know, man, this could really change their whole gimmick and the way people view them public perception wise, and I think Bloodsport's a cool concept, and I say more of it. Now, as far as it taking off in the mainstream, I'm not sure about that, but I'm just happy that WWE talent are allowed to work with certain clearly hand-selected people and promote, because it's not like WWE's working with GCW flat out, but when they do GCW, like Josh Barnett's GCW Bloodsport, which is like its own thing, they're allowed to work with that. And of course, last time there were WWE superstars in attendance. So, let's see more of it, and because Dana White infamously said that he doesn't believe there's a crossover anymore between pro wrestling and MMA fans, that he thinks it's non-existent. And I just disagree with that. What say you, Chris Connor? You think there's an overlap? I think if it has gone away, that it's being reignited once again with these crossovers. What do you think about that?
No, because here's the tough part. And I get why he says it, and I look, I appreciate. MMA fans can appreciate, the Brock Lesnar's, the Creeds, the Caesars or the Caspers, because they both were accomplished wrestlers when they both got into, where Duke, both were All-Americans at Duke, Lola Vice, or Valley Laredo, as we know from Bellator.
Yep.
But it just, when you see an MMA fight and, when you see it in pro wrestling, it's the whole thing it's just painful, because everything you look at in MMA, the grappling, the scrambling, the moves, and then you look at pro wrestling, you look and go, oh crap. No, it's just bastardized. Nobody gets out of a rear naked choke by just pulling the arms off, or when you get an arm bar that deep, they're not just pulling, getting off and just pulling it back on like a bicep curl. That does not exist. It's like when you and I would watch Rocky, as kids, and like, oh yeah, Rocky's just throwing and going, oh yeah, him again. That does not happen.
Yeah.
So I get where Dana's going with that. I like both. And I think there are fans who can like both. But for a lot of hardcore MMA fans, they look at pro wrestling and go, oh my God, this is as goofy as can be. And WWE fans look at UFC and go, oh my God, this is stupid. Why? This is boring. They're just lying on the ground doing nothing. Stand them up. Stand and bang, bro. Stand and bang.
Yeah,
I hear every time when I go down into a Northeast fight on Mohegan Sun. You'll hear people go, stand and bang, bro. Stand and bang. So unfortunately, it's just, you have your MMA fans, you have your pro wrestling fans, you have people like right in the middle, but it's just too different for both parties.
Yeah, and like, I know, like with jiu-jitsu guys who don't like wrestling, they look at it like, we see a chain wrestling situation or whatever, and they just look at that shit as stupid, because some of the submission holds, they're like, well, that's not how you do that, or you wouldn't do this, So
like an ankle, like a Kurt Angle's ankle lock.
Yeah.
You talk to anybody who does like ankle, leg locks and ankle locks, they look at that and go, that's the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah, it's not.
Nobody would ever tap out to that. It's just like an Anderson Silva will up kick you and knock you out, with an up kick.
A front roll.
Just asking to get knocked out. You are crazy. Yeah, but in pro wrestling, they pull that off. It's just the most dangerous move ever.
Yeah, it's funny, man. But I mean, yeah, we're both fans, so clearly there is some crossover. But speaking of crossover, right? So, Dave Meltzer, dummy Dave, like, he never knows what the fuck he's talking about. And he was saying, Shinsuke's off TV, and Shinsuke, look at what they done with Shinsuke, and he's underutilized and blah, 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 blah. Of course, he'll criticize WWE for that, but not AEW. But that's neither here nor there. We're not making this about Dave here. We're going to talk about Shinsuke Nakamura, who then did an interview saying, hey, I'm putting on dream matches in the WWE, and I love America, and I'm here, and this is what I want to do. And, Meltzer's like, I don't know what he's taking time off just to surf and do jiu-jitsu and stuff. It's crazy. Well, he wasn't doing that. He was training Rei Tsuruya, undefeated, 10-0, 1-0 or 2-0 now in the UFC. And he was training him. He cornered him. Of course, I've said it a bunch on the show. Shinsuke, former training partner of Lyoto Machida, former roommate of Tito Ortiz, if I'm not mistaken, or pardon me, the other way around, trained with Tito and roommate of Lyoto Machida. He's had some MMA fights himself. And I think he even fought in Pride, if I'm not mistaken, Shinsuke. Or maybe it was right after Pride was a thing. I'd have to look into that again, do my Wikipedias or my Googleses. But Rei Tsuruya, man, he comes in and he gets a win. Knowing Dana White, how he and his relationship, like being willing to bring in Punk and Brock Lesnar and that. And you have guys like Montez Ford saying, yeah, I would. He's like, yo, if it wasn't for Bianca, I would. He's like, I would be trying to get an MMA fight. He's like, it is something I'm interested in, actually, is fighting in the UFC. I know Jack Gallagher is not with WWE, but he was there, and now he's bare knuckle boxing. He's pretty good. You have guys who can scrap like Tyler Bate or whatever, right? Let's say.
Here's the trouble, though. And I was thinking about that.
Yeah. So let's say a Shinsuke though, he's a real shooter. Let's say he wants to, maybe not him because he's older now, but he's rolling with real guys and he's training with real guys. And let's say one of these WWE guys want to cross over. Do you think UFC is more open to that? And sorry, what were you actually going to say first? And then just let me know, like, do you think UFC is more open to that, or do you think they should stay away from that because that'll make it too hokey and gimmicky?
What's the payoff for all parties? I mean, let's all right. So if you're with WWE, let's say Montez Ford. You go, all right, Montez Ford, you have high hopes for him. He goes to UFC, goes, all right, hey, I want to get a UFC fight. UFC goes, all right, we're going to get you a fight. And they give him just a tomato can. Not even a top 15 fighter. They go, we give you some regional guy like Bellator did for Jake Hager. We remember those. And Montez gets knocked out.
Yeah.
Which we've seen that happen. We all joke here, people like, oh, it's the blah, blah, blah. These are big men who throw big shots, and that happens. I mean, I think it's just too risky because you can't just throw some of these guys here from the WWE into the UFC.
Right. That's what people need to understand too. Like, not everyone's fucking Brock Lesnar or Jake Hager. You know what I mean? Not everybody or Bobby Lashley who have that legit background and are freaks, not everybody's that. So not everybody could transition. I think a guy maybe like a Tyler Bate could, because those lighter guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, wait a minute here. Tyler Bate is what?
Freak athlete, dude. He's a freak athlete, that kid, man. He's freaky, dude. His strength and his speed, that kid is fucking. I don't know. I've never seen him like actually fight, but I know he really trains like a Karrion Kross. Isn't he like a real bare knuckle guy back in the day or something? So, or at least that's the claims. I don't know. He fought in like Kenpo or Muay Thai or whatever back in the day. So,
all right. So Tyler Bate goes.
I'm not saying send 40-year-old pro wrestlers in and let's see a WWE versus UFC. I'm not saying that, and I understand the difference there. And I'm not one of these marks who think like, oh, there's a crossover where these guys could really do it, but. I wouldn't. There's certain guys like a Montez Ford. He is a freak athlete to where I don't know. Can he scrap? I've never seen him kickboxing or anything, but like there's guys who are pretty freak athletes that I would not be mad at if we saw some sort of crossover. But I'm interested in seeing things like Shinsuke training. Like, that's awesome. I love like that. All that does is help raise that kid's stock. And especially when UFC is making plays at Japan currently right now as well in this undefeated race.
I get that part, but it's like, think of PFL, which is supposed to be as Dane likes to call it, it's a step down, which it isn't, but it's still pretty good. Imagine you throw Tyler Bate, who's 175 pounds, against Logan Storley, Lorenz Larkin, Neiman Gracie, Andre Koreshkov. They will go out there and they will just dog walk them.
Yeah.
No, and I mean right. Dog walk them. When you put in, let's say, as I said, Shinsuke Nakamura against even Timothy Johnson, who took on Fedor Emelianenko.
Yeah, but would Nakamura fight at heavyweight though? I don't know if he'd fight that high.
Right. Put him in. He's at 200. Let's say put 205. Put him in against
205. Exactly though. Against who? Like fucking
Bader. Put him in against a guy like Lynn Vassell. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just
Alex Pereira would fucking clear the whole WWE locker room on his own. One guy. Like, I hate on anyone, but
and the worst part is it makes the WWE. I mean, if you're a WWE, you're trying to make these guys say, "Look, they are premier athletes. They are." There's no win. I mean, I get the part. And in theory, it's great when it's Brock, and Brock did a lot. But if you imagine, as I said, if you all of a sudden the Creed brothers, you see them go to the UFC and they take on.
The Creed brothers could fucking fight. They could if they were like, they're going to UFC. I'd be like, all right, they're young and they're freaks, man, and they're really good wrestlers, like really good. So those guys would work for me. But I like that they're doing the blood sport. What I'm getting at,
but can they take a punch?
We
still don't know that. Let's say they go in there against a guy like, hey, I'm just going to throw a name out there, Dante Mays, and Dante Mays hits, drops one of them uppercut, knocks him out. What do you do with the Creeds? Because all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, well, if they're not that tough. They just got knocked out by a guy who's a 500 fighter.
I know what we'll do. I know we'll book him against Butterbean. Yeah, WrestleMania. It'll be awesome.
And then all of a sudden, as we talk, I've had pleasure talk with guys like Kevin Apollo and even guys from like BQ over at BQ Speaks for TNA. It's like, all right, they get injured now. You're paying a guy to be injured because you have him. They lift him on the UFC. Now the UW's paying them. It's great theory. And look, when it was Brock on, when the UFC was paying Brock and paying WWE, big money for UFC 200, I think it was like, all right, well, it's a big check. If it's not a big check, I think for all parties, it's like,
So like where's the payoff?
Yeah.
So, speaking of which, I think the wrestlers are best used like in this capacity, like Shinsuke passing along knowledge, training, showing up, getting some brand recognition on this kid on social media, helping his career out. He's 10-0. UFC's making a play at Japan big time, and WWE's doing the same thing. And there's a guy named that I know WWE, everyone's eyeing up. His name's Kai Asakura. Are you familiar with this kid? He's 30 years old.
I am.
The UFC, of course, you are. So he's trained in karate, sumo, wrestling, boxing. He's a mixed martial artist. Pro wrestling companies are for certainly eyeing him up. This guy, he's also an influencer or something in Japan. He fucking gets millions of views. His fights for ONE FC or Ryzen, pardon me, on YouTube, they get millions of views, man. And this guy's coming into the UFC, and they're really making a hard play at Japan. You see WWE sort of doing the same thing, and having guys like Shinsuke Nakamura being able to pull, because in Japan, like in America, if they put Shinsuke on the screen, the people might not pop like at an MMA event. But in Japan, if they put fucking Minoru Suzuki or Shinsuke Nakamura or one of these guys on the screen, the audience will still pop for those guys. I'm sure, like Japanese style, right? And if they have Kai Asakura fight there, which should happen, I think, down the line, and then you have Rei Tsuruya. So I don't know. I'm just saying, keep a lookout for that. And I like the wrestlers being used in this capacity. Now, I also like them being used in the capacity, and that's Shinsuke was at the Power Slap event that same weekend. Now, this was a while ago, guys, but we didn't really break this all the way down. Shinsuke was at the Power Slap event that same weekend. Rey Mysterio was in the crowd, and they have the wrestlers mixing it up with the influencers and sort of shining some light on Power Slap. And Dana White, of course, has talked about the vision is Friday night Power Slap, Saturday night UFC, Sunday night WWE type thing. And who knows how that'll work, because WWE likes to pair their PLEs with NXT, of course, as well. And they won't want to go head to head. But do you think we'll see any wrestlers like we see them in the crowd? Obviously, well, yeah, WWE guys, maybe. Do you think we'll see any like WWE guys go, yeah, I'll do Power Slap? And what do you think of Power Slap just in general?
Oh, I hate Power Slap. As I said, I don't think the problem with doing all this stuff is there's separate contracts, and you know how it is. It's like, you put one or the other. Nobody wants to have those things where it's like, oh yeah, well,
right. But listen. Endeavor hits up Dana, and they go, look, talk to Triple H. We need to really get some fucking steam behind this Power Slap. Omos, give him a fucking bag and tell him to come Power Slap a motherfucker or something like that. Like, you don't see that? Hey, that Jacob Fatu guy, or maybe not him. No, maybe not him, because if he gets knocked out as fuck. Yeah, I know. But we're talking like they back up the money truck and go, look, let's this could be a freak thing. That Otis guy is fucking huge and stocky and has no neck. Can he take a slap? Well, let's give him $500,000 and see if he can. Do you see that happening, or is that too old school Wild West? Do you think even like Dana White? Because I'm asking because Power Slap's fucking degenerate as fuck, dude. Okay, and we just had Paige VanZant do it. And she was getting Tony Khan's money on the AEW roster until recently. She's fought all over. She's a renowned mixed martial artist. She fought in bare knuckle, and she's a girl that I like. She's like, I'm going to try everything. And she was actually really good in power slap. She had like better technique and more power in power slap than most people I've seen. Now, granted, my history of power slap is I watched the first season of the reality show. I watched the first event. I watched the second one to give it like okay, this is my last try to get into this. And then I just couldn't. I was like, this is so fucking stupid. And then I haven't watched one since the Paige VanZant one. And I sort of just fast forwarded through it till her fight, if you can call it that. So my whole thing is like, is it too Wild West for them to go, all right, yeah, let's get this Omos in there and fuck it. He's not wrestling. Let's give him fucking $750K to come power slap our heavyweight champ or something like. Do you see that, or is that too just like old school?
Yeah, that's just,
even for power slap. Power slap's so fucking dumb. Even for power slap, you think that's not a thing?
Yes, that's just
okay.
Because it's just, remember, here's the thing with Dana. He's always been a guy who likes to say, we don't do the gimmick fights. And I remember, when we covered him, when I first started covering MMA for him, he always bragged, "Hey, we're not doing gimmick fights."
That's a tour shit.
I mean, he only did it for with the tour of Tony because it was James Toney was like literally stalking him, like
showing up at press conferences.
Everybody, and it was like, all right, fine, we'll just do it. And even then, he regretted it. And I remember like, oh god, I can't believe we did this year.
That was amazing.
Every other time,
I remember winning $50 on that fight.
Yes,
from my friend.
And I remember even afterwards, it was like just a look on his face, like I can't believe he did that. It's like when you get caught like riding a moped in a bikini, and you're just have that look of shame, like I can't believe I did this. Why?
I know, but Paige
that was Dana.
But here's the thing, bro. Paige did the power slap though, so like I get the idea of like, no, there's what's the risk reward, but like, what was the risk reward for Paige VanZant? I guess she's a real fighter.
What? Here's why. Because she was a UFC fighter who did pro wrestling. So for Dana, it's like, all right, hey, she started off as an MMA fighter. Yeah, she dabbled in pro wrestling, but it's not like he looks at it as like, well, it's like one of it's like Chael Sonnen. Hey, he dabbled in pro wrestling. It's what not one of these guys who I just grab from pro wrestling with no talent and then just slapped him on power slap.
What about a Bobby Lashley then? What about a Bobby Lashley? He's a real legit fighter. He's a real legit pro wrestler.
And Bobby Lashley's never been in the UFC, has he?
Well, no, but fuck, man, he was like 15-4 or something, or 15-2. I think his record is phenomenal.
But he's never been in the UFC.
I know.
I get it.
So him for power slap. I'm saying MMA to wrestling or wrestling to MMA. Like we're talking, he's a legit guy. He's fought in Strikeforce. He's fought in Bellator. He's fought real guys.
Why would WWE do that? I mean, if you're WWE,
I don't know. That's what I'm just saying. Like, do you think we'll get that crazy?
No,
I didn't think we'd ever see Paige VanZant do it either.
Oh, I do. Because to me, once Paige VanZant lost in BKFC. Once, there was nothing for her in AEW, it's like, well, what else is there to do? I mean, it's either power slap, porn. Power slap, porn. I mean, we're joking, but it's like, what else is there to do? It's like,
you what?
Think of it. I mean, she was not winning in MMA.
Yeah.
She had flamed out in the UFC. Money to her is a big thing. So it's like, all right, let's just do power slap because that's what it was done to. She's either doing power slap or she's doing the Misfits boxing. We're not talking an acting career here. This is what her talent is really. It's combat sports, but she's not good enough to compete in the high levels of MMA or boxing.
I think you're right about that. We're talking about crossover stuff and sort of influencer. I guess Paige is an influencer. I wouldn't call her that. Maybe now she's not an influencer, but like a OF girl. But I don't want to just, limit her to that either. Whatever. But
she's an athletic influencer who,
who like legit did the thing. Yeah. So, but influencer boxing fights. And we'll wrap up we'll talk about Perry and Tyson and Paul and all that. But just first, before into that, like. Influencer boxing fights, like what do you think the future is in that? Is it dying off? We see Tyson versus Paul, Perry versus Paul now. this thing was hot, but now like we're seeing it go to Netflix, right? And why? In my opinion, because the experiment failed of like selling pay-per-views based on these. Not failed, but like they grabbed the money that was in that, and now it's starting to wane off a little bit. And even like we saw Ngannou virtually beating Fury and then just getting starched by Joshua, and then Fury loses to Usyk. So it's like even that whole like, oh, an MMA guy is gonna come box a boxer, what if, like that's sort of dead now too, because Ngannou just hotshot booked himself instead of waiting for a Fury rematch after he lost to Usyk. He just went and lost to fucking Joshua right away, which good for him. He got paid more than he's probably ever seen in his life to do that. But do you think this influencer boxing shit and this Jake Paul shit lasts, or do you think Jake Paul's like gonna go to WWE like his brother sooner than later with the way things are going?
I never thought I'd say this, and I'm regretting saying this here. I'm regretting saying this. Jake Paul will be a cruiserweight champion by the end of 2025.
Oh my God, that is a fucking here. We're gonna give you an X-Files for that one, dude.
Just listen to me.
Okay, we're hearing you.
We're talking boxing. We're talking first cruiserweight, which it is a very, very limited pool. It is also a sport which, hey, look, a lot of these title belts can be literally up for sale. All it takes is just like the IB, like WBA interim or silver title, or the IBO or the NABF North American, and you'll find some people who he can look and go, all right, I can beat this guy who's 14-2-1, maybe 23-1, who's a little bit smaller than him, who he could beat, and he will get a title because he still draws money. This is a sport which is desperate for eyeballs and desperate for money. And, somebody will offer him a bag. Somebody will just look and go, I don't care. I will just literally, we'll do it. We will just find a way to get this guy. Hell, we'll find a way we'll get him ranked. We'll get him ranked, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, look at your cruiserweights, right? And it's like, or Bridgerweight. There's a division called Bridgerweight, which we're still trying to figure that part out. But I mean, looking like a cruiserweight here, and there's some guys I'm looking at, like Marcus Brown's still hanging around.
Oh yeah.
Guys like Joe, who
But do you think? Here's my only thing is that I don't.
Do I think he can beat him right now? No.
You think, but like in how long? Like how? Because here's the thing: Logan is clearly more athletically gifted than Jake, but Jake is more of a savage than Logan. So Logan's like, if Jake does transition to pro wrestling, he's not going to do as good as Logan, but he's not going to take lumps. But I think if Logan dedicated himself to boxing the way Jake has, he'd be a better boxer than Jake. I truly believe that. He's just more athletic, and like Jake has to work harder for that. Can he work hard enough to become cruiserweight fucking champion? I personally don't know if that, like, how does he get there? Who does he beat to get there? Like, he's got to fight a couple real dudes, and he doesn't want to do that. He fought one real dude. He fought one real dude in Tommy Fury, who's at his level, and Tommy Fury's hardly like the best boxer out there. And now Jake's like, fuck that, I'm fighting old man Mike Tyson, who's like, whatever happened to him. And I'm not disrespecting Mike Tyson. I'm saying it's old man Tyson. Like, I don't even want to see Tyson fight this kid. It's ridiculous. Like, I'll watch it, but he's going after him. And then like, I do think it says a lot that Paul's willing to fight Perry, because I think this is a worse matchup for Paul than Tyson is. But before we get into that, like, you really think though he'll develop enough skill to become a cruiserweight champion? You don't think a crafty vet could take him out with just using skill over? I do, but we are talking about, I'm not talking about a world title. I'm not talking about, the WBC, the IBF. I'm talking about like a Just some
silver
fucking
belt, something about.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I
And
could
you know
see.
what?
I mean,
As I said,
it wouldn't shock me.
it's a division. He is right now, according to BoxRec, he is ranked the 15th best American cruiserweight in the world.
That's fucking blasphemous.
15th best American in the world. That's not saying much because you have guys like Marcus Brown, Joe Smith Jr., Brandon Clanton, Tristan Calcrew. Then you go to like Derek Milton Jr., Mushin Kaysen, Vincenzo Carita, who's 39 years old from Pembroke, Mass.
Well, hold on though. While we're on this topic too, so like, what do you think about just like real rapid fire? I got a few for you. What do you think of Ngannou getting washed by Joshua? Like, why didn't he just wait for a Fury rematch? Because Fury ended up getting washed by Usyk. What do you think about Usyk cleaning up Fury, and what do you think about Ngannou getting cleaned up by Joshua?
There was no way he could wait for Fury because that would have just.
And we lost Chris Connor. Oh, here we go. Chris is back here. Here we go. Editing Phil. We lost you for a sec, buddy. You're here. So
I had to step back here because I was looking at my timeline, talk to a source of mine here who covers this stuff.
Okay.
So the problem Ngannou faced was this. If he had waited for Fury, it would have had to been a 1.5 year long wait because Fury had already signed a contract to fight Usyk, and there was a mandatory rematch clause where no matter who won, unless it was like a first or second round knockout, there'd be a mandatory rematch. And there was even talking to be a trilogy fight because, well, that's the way boxing goes.
Right.
And Ngannou didn't want to do that. He didn't want to have to sit there and wait for another 1.5 years to not box. And for Joshua fight, he was guaranteed at least $10 million. Was it a risk? Yes, it was a risk. But hey, when they're offering $10 million, it's like, all right, you can't pass that up. Now,
so did Ngannou? Or sorry, go ahead.
The hope for them was that at worst case scenario, Deontay Wilder would hopefully do semi-decent and still be around, and maybe they could make a Deontay Wilder versus the Ngannou fight if Wilder won or lost. Unfortunately, because Wilder has lost so badly, now that's off the table, and there's just concerns that there's nothing really for Ngannou to really do. I mean,
so do you think he ever goes back to MMA?
A big fight for him.
Did he ruin his chances of going back to MMA? Like, what does he do now? Box who? Like, who does he box? Deontay Wilder? Like, Deontay just got cleaned up by that fucking older dude as well. And it's like that whole generation sort of like done other than Joshua, but we never even got the Fury fucking Joshua fight. So I don't know, man. And even he got beat as well by Ruiz, which isn't a big deal, but I don't know, man. I just think that
Joshua now takes on Dubois. Winner of that gets the winner of Usyk versus Fury 2. In theory, you never know because there could be a trilogy. That's always happens. So, yeah, as I said, there's always a wild card, and we could see, if Andy Ruiz looks pretty good, I wouldn't put.
I say they should. Sorry, I was going to say, I say they should give us Ngannou versus Wilder just as like both of them, big money for both of them, and just see if someone knocks the other one stiff. And then, but do you think Ngannou ever goes back to MMA? Like, do you think that PFL stuff was just publicity stunt? Do you think we ever see, like, who's he going to fight in PFL? Like, you know what I mean? And then like UFC, they're just laughing because they're like, well, he just got starched. So there's, you know what I mean? Even though like no one else would have been able to do what he did with Fury. So I don't know, man. I just think that whole thing is sort of ruined now, too. Not that one loss ruins everything. Like, I'll always support Ngannou, but do you think he ever fights in PFL, or is that just publicity at this point?
I mean, according to when I talked to Marcel, shout out to Marcel Dorf of MMA Odds Breaker, great guy, one of the best MMA insiders in this business. He said that the plan as of now, knock on wood, is for Ngannou to come back in December. That's when he's supposed to fight
in PFL.
The PFL. That he's supposed to fight coming in.
Wow,
yeah. That is the plan,
bro.
Now,
and
we'll
that
see
guy's
what happens.
Fucking scary. That heavyweight. Sorry, what's his name? Can you say it again?
I believe it's Renan Ferreira.
Ferreira, yeah, that guy's fucking terrifying too. So like that's a fight. That's what I mean. What's in that for Ngannou? What if he loses to that guy? God damn it. It's crazy. It's not like that guy's some schlub either. So it's just that's why I'm like, are they really gonna?
Yeah, but I think for Ngannou, you're looking at that going back.
Yeah, that might be light work for him though too as well. Like I mean, he KO'd Kane. He beat all these.
I mean,
guys,
they're all dangerous at this point.
Yeah, you're right, man. You're right. So, we're gonna end with we were talking about Jake Paul, Perry, but just quickly, I wanted to rapidly shoot these off as well. So, Chael and Anderson Silva had like a friendly sparring match in Brazil. I don't know if you saw the footage of that. And they called it, I think, a draw, or they gave it to Silva. But I mean, they just went and both grabbed a bag, and it was the end of their quote unquote trilogy. And they didn't really hype it up or do anything big. They just came out of nowhere. And yeah, I watched the footage, and they just had like a glorified kind of friendly sparring match. What do you make of that?
Kudos to them for getting the money. I feel bad for the fans who went to that and expected blood and guts. It's just
they did it in Brazil, and it wasn't really a big house, and they kept it quiet. They didn't really promote it. It came out of nowhere. So I think they knew sort of what this was like. Yeah, we're gonna make some money here and give the people see Chael and Anderson kind of throw down. I don't know. Is that he's a superstar there, right? It's like watching Tom Cruise box. So I don't know, man. I'm not mad at it, but yeah, I was disappointed. I was like, shit, I didn't think Chael would just go and like do a job, but then again, it's Chael P, and he's never done a job. So shout out Uncle Chael. And I like that they went and got a little bag there. But did you watch Masvidal versus Diaz? Did you watch that fight? Some people are saying it was rigged. What do you think about that?
I did not, but I mean, they're both past their prime, and it
was a good match, dude. It was a good match, actually. They were both trading, and it wasn't a big bloodbath like I thought. And I don't know, but yeah, they're both definitely way past their prime. But Nate Diaz won, and he actually said it flat out. He's like, no, I want to be UFC champion. He's like, that's what I want. So, and he called out Leon Edwards after his boxing win over Masvidal. But then he said also, he's like, yes, I want to box again. He's like, I want to box the highest ranked guy that they'll fucking give me at my weight class. And I want to give him shine and rub, and I want to get some notoriety on him and whoever that person may be, So he's not done with boxing, but he expressed it explicitly. I want to be UFC champion. Leon Edwards, you're a bitch. You know what I mean? And I'm going to be UFC champ type thing. So what do you make of all that?
Why? Oh God, no. Look, I know people love Nate Diaz, and I get it. He whatever you say about him, whether you love him or hate him, he is real. But look, yeah. he couldn't stop any wrestler when he was in his prime. He's no longer in his prime. Even if you put him in against a real boxer, he's going to get destroyed. Just no.
But if he goes in there against, but if he goes in there against a real high-ranked guy and he gives him the rub, and this guy beats the shit out of him, and then this guy becomes more notorious because of it and gets more notoriety, then that's like giving back to the business a little bit. No, don't you admire that part of it?
But they did. But UFC doesn't want to deal with them. They didn't like. They were. It was when after the Ferguson fight, it was like, thank God we're just done with them. There was that sense of like, thank God. It's all fun and games. It's like having that. Yeah. Crazy ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend.
He almost KO'd Leon
Happy's
Edwards.
Gone.
Yeah.
And then when he comes back around, it's like deep fried Twinkie.
But he almost KO'd Leon. He almost KO'd Leon Edwards in their fight at the end of the fight there. Like, you don't think he could come in and shock the world, and if it was 5 rounds, he wouldn't have, or I can't remember if that one was 5 rounds or not, but you don't think Nate could shock the world and take Leon out, and Leon wouldn't want to jump at that as someone he's beaten before, and it's a big money fight for him. Like, you don't think the UFC's maybe interested in that? Or
no, that was 3 years ago. I mean,
but who else is at welterweight?
You can find names at welterweight. There's Shavkat Rakhimov. I mean,
but are these guys draws? People. That's the thing.
This is what boxing's doing right now. Like, oh, hey, you know what? We need to find names. Let's dust off Manny Pacquiao. Hey, that's a good idea.
You're right.
There,
it is kind of boxing.
No, I mean, this is, as I said, deep fried Twinkie. Yeah, Phil, you're better for that. You're better than a deep fried Twinkie.
You're right, Chris. I am. So, speaking of like it trending downward as we wind down here on this eclectic edition of PWT. So, just to circle back to the beginning of this discussion, I said I wanted to end on this. So, the influencer boxing stuff, Paul versus Perry. Paul out of desperation. Mike Tyson falls through. Who can he go with? Mike Perry, who's been on a roll in BKFC. I think he's 5-0 in bare knuckle. He's knocked out former MMA world champs there, stopped them. Luke Rockhold, MVPs, beaten, a bunch of different guys. He was bred for this. And he's just a bloody savage. And I think this is a worse fight for Jake Paul than Perry. And I think Paul shifting the Tyson thing going to Netflix is indicative of like, these influencer fights aren't going to last for fucking ever. And Paul's booked himself in a corner where he's got to start fighting real guys. And so they do this Netflix thing because Netflix is trying to get into the live entertainment. Now, a lot of people are mad. They wanted to see Tyson versus Paul. I'm more excited for this because I think Perry's going to beat I know you're saying Jake's going to be a cruiserweight champ, but I think Perry's going to beat the shit out of this kid, the ever-loving shit out of him. And I think this is going to be, he's not ready for what's about to happen. Now, this isn't bare knuckle. Obviously Perry, I think he's boxed in the past. He might have some pro fights on his record as far as boxing, but we know in MMA, he wanted to be a striker primarily. In bare knuckle, it's not the same as like real boxing. There's a different level of savagery that goes to it, but he's going to bring that to this ring. I see this being the worst ass beating Jake Paul's ever taken in his life. I don't think he'll be able to put Perry to sleep. And I think this is a worse matchup for him than Tyson. Your thoughts on it? And after this fight, where do you see the state of influencer boxing going after this?
This is going to be a slaughter for Paul.
Ooh.
Mike Perry is 5'10" and was fighting at 170 pounds. That's Jake Paul. People forget Jake Paul's a big kid. He's 6'1".
He's big,
200 pounds. So he's going to have probably, I'm guessing, 220 pound, 20 pound weight advantage, 3 inches of height, maybe 4 inches reach. Imagine, as I said, imagine if Tyrone, just look at the Wheatley fight. That's what's going to happen. You're going to have, he'll eventually wait. He'll catch him right on the button, and it's going to be just a vicious knockout for Paul. The only guy
you think though, but like no one's starched Perry though. No one's been able to do that. So what do you like?
Because who's Perry fought that's been bigger than them? I mean, you look at Perry. It's been like, all right, nobody starched him, but it's been like who. Well, Eddie Alvarez guy.
Yeah, he beat Eddie Alvarez. He beat fucking Luke Rockhold, who's like a real, like Luke Rockhold walks around at like 200 pounds, man. He was the 85 champ, and that's what I mean. Perry's been fighting heavier. He beat MVP, who's now like he just lost to Ian Gary, but he's
not really a boxer.
No, I know, but like it's the fact that these guys are like, is Luke Rockhold not a savage? You know what I mean? Is fucking MVP not a savage? Is Eddie Alvarez not a savage? Perry's gone to war. He's taken all the Thiago Alves. I think he beat as well. Can't tell me that guy's not a fucking savage, So I don't know, man. I just think this is a bad move on Jake Paul's part to switch to this, but I think he's backed into a corner. What else? Who's gonna talk that shit? Like, there's no other name. Like Mike Tyson doesn't have to talk shit for everyone to get excited. So what other name is there? Like, who's going to barb back and forth with him if it's not Connor? Because Connor's never going to fight Jake, and I don't know why he wants to fight Connor. He's a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier than him.
No, look, I get it. I understand what you're saying. And look, but Perry's a dog. I give him credit. He's going to come to bring the fight, but it's just, when you are taking on a guy who is a trained boxer, who's going to have a 5-inch reach, it's going to be a boxing match, not a bare knuckle brawl. So it's going to be it'll be different rules. It's going to be boxing it's going to be boxing gloves, not bare knuckle gloves.
So you don't think Perry will be able to
in a boxing ring, which means.
But you don't think Perry will be able to eat those shots better? Like
the shots, it's a whole different game.
But you don't think Perry will?
Everybody think there's reason why a lot of bare knuckle fights. No, I don't, because it's going to be a different. It's going to be different. I'm telling you, there's a reason sometimes why more knockouts sometimes happen in a fight like this rather than a bare knuckle fight, because it's repeated shots, it's repeated jabs, It's like, death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's consistent, just jab, 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 then overhand right, jab, 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 left cross, jab, jab, jab. It's just repeated punches to the face, punches to the body, where all of a sudden it just wears you down.
Chris Connor, are you a betting man?
I am a betting man.
You want to wager a little friendly wager? We should set up a fucking watch along for that or something like that. And
I'm not paying for this. I'm not paying for this thing. This is going to be probably pay-per-view because I don't.
No. This fight's on Netflix. It's on Netflix. I'm just saying, if you're a betting
what is the wager here? Because all right, because I don't want to put money on this here because I just don't want to sit down and watch this. This is going to be this is a deep fried Twinkie for me. Oh God!
You're not even interested in this fight. To you
no, because I've been dreading this year. I've been praying that all the YouTubers finally leave boxing. They've been the bane of my existence.
That's what I'm getting to. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to get out of you, Chris. Let's go, Chris Connor. That's what I'm trying to get out of you, my friend. So the whole influencer boxing thing, you're fuck out of here. Even though you're saying, oh, Jake might slime his way into some sort of cruiserweight title, you're enough already. Get these influencers out of here. They have the rough and rowdy events that Barstool does, but those have fallen off tremendously too. People don't care about those like they did. Do you think this whole influencer boxing thing is sort of at its tail end because everyone sees where it leads to with Jake? You work yourself into a shoot and then you got to fight real fucking shoot fighters who are going to come and try and take your head off like a fucking Mike Perry or I keep
saying it will. I keep saying a lot of things will end in boxing, but yet boxing is it's like the deep fried Twinkie. We keep thinking it will die.
Dude, you fucking love deep fried Twinkies, bro. You love
because they survive. They survive everything. They can survive a nuclear holocaust, and they'll just still be there. Yeah, edible.
Dude. Well, I guess one last one. Do you think we ever see a WWE guy do because now that they're more open, do you think we ever see one of them try and do an influencer boxing, like a Karrion Kross versus I don't know, who's one of these influencers, Sneeko or one of these fucking idiots? You know what I mean?
No, because the money's not there. I mean, if you're Karrion Kross, are you willing to risk big money for this?
I mean, yeah, no, I don't think any of these guys are going to knock Karrion Kross out if it's one of these social media influencers. I'm not talking Kross fighting a real boxer. I'm talking social media guy. We get KSI, who we've seen in WWE a little bit. KSI versus fucking Shinsuke in a fucking boxing, maybe not Shinsuke particularly, but just a guy from WWE, let's say, in an influencer boxing match for one of these events. You don't ever see that.
No, because they're not going to do that. It's not who would want to do that? The influencer's not going to agree to that. No influencer's going to go, oh yeah, I'm going to take on somebody who could kill me. It'd be they'll go, oh yes, let's have Eddie Hall versus
not Eddie Hall, not Eddie Hall. That's
what it'd be like. It'd be that's what somebody would go oh, let's have Eddie Hall versus Karrion Kross. That's a social influencer fight for the ages. Why would Karrion Kross agree to that? It'd be that doesn't sound like a great idea.
Payday, bro. The almighty dollar, Chris Connor. The almighty dollar.
Yes, I don't think there's enough dollars for Karrion Kross to go, I don't know if that's a good idea for me here. That guy looks like he could bench press me and my car with my wife in it. I don't think that's a good idea.
I love it. I love it so much. Well, Chris Connor, man, I want to thank you so much for being here with me today. Why don't you let the good PWT Universe listeners and viewers know where they can find you, where they can follow you, and what you have going on? Any plugs you got, go right ahead. The floor is yours.
So you can check me out. It is the lastcallpodcast.com. I'm also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It is with the Last Call with W. Chris C. Check it out. It's the last couple of interviews we've had with Diana Barbosa of UFC fame. Manny Montreal and I also sat down and talked Olympic boxing. The last time it's going to be the 2024 Olympics. This weekend's fights. Check it out. And also, we just dropped the interview this weekend. Once again, me and you, Phil Marks, talked about John Cena's retirement, the final tour, what dates, what places, who he'll find out his opponents will be, the CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, three-way feud, what's going on with that, and a whole lot more. And Phil, always love coming on with you, and hopefully we could do a return where you can go hot and just go nuclear on AEW.
Hey man, let me know the time and the place, and I'll be there. And I try not to go nuclear on AEW. It's just it just happens sometimes. You know what I mean? They've let me down, my man. But that's another conversation for another day, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much, Chris Connor, for being here. I can't wait to do your show again, and you're welcome back here anytime, my good friend. And I do lives on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Feel free to pop in anytime, man. I appreciate you so much. And thank you so much. Another round of applause for, of course, Chris Connor and Ant Evans at Ant Evans. Make sure you go and follow him too. A brilliant interview. And I, of course, am the infallible Phil Marks. You can find me at Pro Wrestle Times, youtube.com/at Pro Wrestle Times, the long form channel. We're on the road to 2,000 subs. We just surpassed 1,100. Thank you all so much for that. And we're on the road to 4,000 subs over at the main channel at Pro Wrestle Clips, which is youtube.com/at Pro Wrestle Clips, and we're at like over 3,000. I want to say like 900 now or 800, and we're almost at 4,000. So thank you all so much for that. Here, I'll shout out some members too, and if I missed anybody, I'm sorry. I've been recording interviews. Like I got another one with Killer Kelly coming up in just a minute here. So Scully Vibes, George Capture, Bocce Ball Pro, Savage Wrestling Podcast, LK Sass Prophet, Gilgamesh, El Huapo Diablo, Jamie Earhart, Cruz Madrid, Derek Hans, and anybody else I missed, I apologize. I love you. You guys know that. Blow you kisses. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. Chris, thank you so much again for being here, guys. Go check me out over on the Last Call podcast with Chris Connor. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the Upside Down. Peace.